Start now.
And the timer is going. Go.
Today we're going into the Chambers with Sandy Chambers. Sandy has been a successful director of sales and marketing for Starwood Hotels and Resorts. She's received multiple performance awards and is known for her turnaround ability, taking underperforming hotels and building powerful cultures that produce financial results. She's a facilitator of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, studied in the Landmark Education and Institute for Self-Actualization. She's been called an executive whisperer and a cultural shapeshifter. Please welcome Sandy Chambers.
Can we pop that open, please? Thank you. So, in the chambers. Why in the chambers? I have been told through multiple sources that I am so passionate about how you relate to life and how our experience of life is that my conversation with you is like going in the chambers. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at some incredible ways to look at how we're relating to life, how we're experiencing life, and to get past the bullshit and the ways of hiding out, and we're going to go in the chambers. So I'd like for you to take a little journey with me. It happens in a beautiful Sunday morning day, and I am 7 years old, young child. So imagine a young child who is very excited about life and gets a new dress that her grandmother has made for her. And she puts on the dress, I put on the dress, I'm in front of this long mirror in my parents' bedroom, and I am seeing myself full view with this new beautiful dress on that my grandmother has made, and I have the experience of feeling so beautiful. I felt it all the way through my body. At 7 years old, you're just like, wow. I mean, I was in awe, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so beautiful. Life is so beautiful. And I go out to my father, who's sitting outside on the patio, and I am a daddy's little girl, so I am very excited about sharing with my dad how beautiful I feel. So I go to share with my dad, and I say, Dad, I feel so beautiful. I feel so beautiful. And he looks at me and he says, in a very loving and very stern way, don't ever say that about yourself ever again. I don't want to hear that. And so at that moment was, I think you could call it a defining moment in one's life, that I made a separation, a disconnection from who I was and who I was being. And so that led me, that gift that my father gave me, which I now know was a gift of protection and a gift of love, really was what gave me the trajectory to really look at how are we experiencing life? How connected am I experiencing life? What is this relating to life, and how is that really working? Because you know what? We can, as we all have, experience life in those split-second moments as either healthy or unhealthy. And we all have that, what I consider that barbed wire moment, where our filters are either filtering something beautiful for our lives or filtering something not beautiful for our lives. You know what I think too is amazing is that the other day I read, now I've been in corporate America for 30 years. I read that we are bringing in social workers in the corporate setting to help us learn how to communicate. I'm like, what is going on with us? What is happening? Why are we so going on this trajectory of disconnection versus connection? What is really happening in our experience of life? And from that place, it has led me to this place of raw leadership. I am so impassioned to say, hello people, can we please wake up to what we're doing to each other and to our lives. And I feel like that really starts in how we are working our lives in our businesses every day. And part of raw leadership is how we relate to life, what our awareness is, and what our worth is. Those three critical things I think are so important. Relating to life, are we healthy or are we unhealthy? Here's a clue. You're driving down the road. Somebody cuts in front of you. Your first response, God bless it, can those people not know how to drive? What the heck is going on? Instead of, oh, I see that you're in a hurry. I'm glad you're able to get in front of me and get on with your life. All of those little bitty, I call it sweat the small stuff. All of those little bitty moments set a habit and a trajectory of how you are really taking in your life. So when you're relating to your life, are you healthy or are you unhealthy? Your awareness to life. Are you willing to take on feedback or are you really looking at your life in a sense of denial? Because feedback comes in all moments, every single day. And are you willing to really look at that as feedback for how you're relating to your life? I'm a very principle-centered person. A lot like Stephen Covey, if you've ever looked at his work, is very much about principally centered. So those principles, everything communicates and everything is connected. So when I get feedback from the universe, when somebody is saying to me in my life, you really make me angry, then who am I? Am I willing to take that on to say, what am I doing in my life that creates this angry situation or this angry person that's in front of me? Or if I'm having a beautiful experience of people in cooperation and in alignment with one another, then I'm saying, oh, you know what? I'm on board for creating alignment and creating connection for one another. So in our awareness of life, are we really using everything in our life as a chance of feedback to really show up? How are we relating to life? And our worth. Where is our value? If we have no worth for ourselves, then we have no value. And a lot of our worth comes from our net worth. What does my car look like? What does my house look like? What does my partner look like? What does my bank account look like? All of those things have determined our worth. And what really boils down to is our self-worth. And our self-worth, if all of that is gone, it's where do we find our value in ourselves? And that gives us into our long trajectory of who we are as individuals. So in this journey of relating to self, life, and others, how are we embracing this flow of life, this overall capturing the essence and the awareness, our relationships, our awareness, and our worth in life? Are we really capturing it? Are we really willing to be in life in an engaged way? This is an example of feedback that I received about my working with a group of team in an underperforming hotel. This was 30 or 40 moments of gratitude that people received or give to me because I put them in the chambers. We had tough conversations, we had direct conversations that got them to a place of really embracing their life in a full and powerful way. And from that, I received all of these moments of gratitude. And that is great feedback to say, am I really contributing to life? Am I being a powerful example of what's really going on? And am I empowering others to really make that shift in their life? And from that place, I love that awareness or the raw leadership for me has created the space for me to do that. So I look forward to working with you and on your journey into raw leadership and being fully engaged people in your life. Go, done.
All right.
Thank you.
Keep standing. this bit. All right, Des, we'll let you lead us through.
Okay. So I'm not sure how you typically give feedback, but I give it in two forms, strengths and opportunities, because I believe they're the only things that exist when we speak. We all strive for perfection, hoping to get there one day. So let me start with the strengths. The one thing when I work with any individual in a coaching capacity, the thing that I always look for is energy. Because as a coach, I know that that's the one thing that I can't put into someone. If it's like it's not there, it's not there. But you have great energy. And as you went through the presentation, you said different things to express that energy. And energy is actually contagious. So when you yelled and things like that, you made me look up. I felt connected to what you were saying. So I think that's a tremendous strength that you have. I could also tell that you were very confident. The signal to me was just your gestures. You used wide gestures once you got comfortable after the first couple of minutes or so. You swirled around when you were talking about how beautiful you were and really stepped into that gesture. So all those things to me communicate that you're confident on the platform and you're also convincing. So I would buy whatever it is you're selling because you're passionate about it. I think when you first said passion, you actually hit the table to wake us all up. So all really good things on that front. On the opportunity side, I think the biggest opportunity for me would be tighter organization of your content. So I really wasn't clear what we were trying to accomplish. So you started off with talking about the chamber, which I think is good, and it's actually, your last name is Chamber, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so great play off of your last name. I think what you have to do in the beginning is you have to make a decision. So do you want to talk about the chamber first? And if you do talk about the chamber first, I would suggest that you take us into the chamber. So what does that feel like emotionally for us? So walk us down into that chamber. So I'm sure in your corporate and professional roles, you probably had some tense moments in times like this, talking to people about things that they need to do. So if you commit to the chamber, then really take us there and let us, or even tell us what that feels like emotionally so that we're there with you. So this way when you refer back to it, we will actually feel emotionally what you're talking about. I felt that the chamber competed with the story about your father in the beginning. So I felt like there were two kind of big concepts that were at the beginning together, and I would just decide which one you want to use first and to let that one sort of establish the pace. If I were coaching you, I would say start with the story about your father and trying on a beautiful dress. Because whether you're male, female, I have a daughter, if you're a woman, you've probably done that yourself before. And so you instantly have me connected, and I'm asking myself the question, where are you going to take me from this story? And so you hooked us, and so then your goal becomes to hold our attention throughout the rest of the presentation. Talking about the story itself. So when you started that story, you were switching perspectives in the story. So you were narrating the story, saying she, and then at other times you were saying I. So make the story, if it's your story, own the story throughout the whole experience. And what I try to advise clients to do is just really in your mind, go back to that day, go back to that place, and tell us that story, and just totally forget that the audience is there, and just have that experience of what that was like, seeing yourself standing in front of that mirror, swirling around, in your dress, and really, really live in that moment. And the audience will certainly connect with it. I love the RAW acronym for leadership. I think that's really good. And I'm assuming in a longer keynote, you would talk more about each one of those points. Is that correct? Okay. So as far as organization is concerned, just to kind of clean up my points, I would use the story of your the beautiful dress story in the beginning and your father and what that conversation meant to you. And then going from there, I would make the connection to this raw leadership that we're going to talk about. And then I would just kind of take off from there. A few more quick points and I'll be quiet. So my question for you, and the question that I ask all my clients is, what does your audience currently believe and how are they behaving? And then the other question is, what do you want them to believe and how do you want them to behave? So on one side is, what do they already believe and what are they doing? Okay, so that's already established, that's happening. And then on this side, it's like, what do you want them to believe and how do you want them to behave? The speech or the presentation is actually in the middle of that. It's like, what is the gap? What is the thing that's going to bring these bring this together. So these people who are acting or believe this and behaving this way, I want them to believe this and behave differently. And so the speech is in the middle. And no matter what your content is, you can pull those two things together. But if you're clear about that up front, then it makes the presentation more clear as you go through it. So the things that I suggest everyone, anytime you're doing a presentation, ask yourself, what do I want my audience to know? How do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do? So for me, that is the starting line for every presentation, because if we aren't clear on that, then there's no guarantee that we're going to take the audience where we want to go at the end of the presentation. Excuse me. And then the last quick thing is I would use words of emphasis to highlight points. And what I mean by that is saying to your audience, so what this means to you is, or I shared this with you because, or this is important because. So when you say those words, I call those ear perkers, and they make people lean in. And so after you share a story, or after you make a, one of your critical points, then those words, what this means to you is, or this is important because, or I shared this with you because, makes people lean in, and they also have the feeling that you're summarizing everything that they just heard. I think I got everything.
Okay.
Thanks, Des. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'll go.
Yep.
Okay. Again, I love the raw leadership idea. I think I wrote great animation of your face and your body the whole time. And great eye contact. When you said we're going to go to, when you say we are, I think what we do is we say, you don't feel as an audience member as a part of it. You're talking to an entire audience instead of saying you. So you might want to add stuff like, today you're going to discover, today you're going to learn. Does that make sense? And the same kind of thing with, I would ask more questions and more yous than I's. That's one of my biggest things.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Great point.
That's everything.
What I'd like to add on to that, I picked up the same point as Mike did on the very beginning. And you know what kind of like occurred to me, like flew into my head when I heard that? It was like the beginning to the Twilight Zone. The intro is, join me in the, in the Twilight Zone where this happens. 'Cause that's what I kind of felt like he wanted us to do, is to go into this special place. And I remember the old TV show, and probably everyone else is not as old as I am to remember it, but so I would say, like, join, to bring that in, join me in the chambers, make that an invitation as Mike was saying, rather than just telling them what it is or why you were calling that. Don't even explain it that way. Say, join me in the chambers, and then as Des was getting into, that's a roll into, what does it mean to be in the chambers? So you're asking people to join you, and then when they're in the chambers with you, bring them there. What does that feel like? And that's, to transition into your beginning. Great improvements since the last presentation. I like your slides as well. I like the fact that you didn't have any words up there, and you were trying to communicate the feelings. And I thought that was pretty effective. I would say that I prefer not to hear 4-letter words. So I wouldn't say bullshit. I would just say BS if you want to be able to do that. And you had great gestures, and I think that you have a real chance for connection there, and you're getting better every time you're here. So good.
Go ahead. Thanks.
Love all the feedback. I love the concept, of course. I feel like you were rushing from it, so I feel like, and I don't know how much time you took, but I felt like you could.
9:30.
Okay. It felt like there needed to be more, a little bit more depth in making each of the raw RAW points. But the one thing that I wanted to tell you, there are two things. One is, I think if you could, when you show the slide of the notes that you got, if you could turn it to the audience and say, can you think of a time when you did something and you you know, you connected so much that you got this kind of a reinforcement that you knew that you had impacted their lives. Instead of saying it that this is what I got, because I feel like that way you're bringing them into it. You don't even have to necessarily say, it's inferred that this is what you were given without saying, look what I got. I feel like that kind of turned me off. I think, you know, does that make sense?
Yeah, I made a note on the gratitude board too.
Yeah.
I think it's all there. It's just kind of tightening things up and building a through line. And you talked about it in the sense that, you know, what is it you want the audience to walk away with? What is it you want them to do when it's over? And it's just like any editing process, it's a lot more about what we take out than what we put in. So it's really getting super tight on what's serving the through line. So that thread that connects every piece of the discussion. I loved the concept barbed wire moment. I thought that was really, that actually created an image for me immediately, but it didn't go anywhere. And I don't know if it serves in this particular presentation just because of the image that it created for me, but I loved it, and I think there's something more to do there. I think you've made tremendous improvement since the last time we saw that, and just continuing to tighten it up is huge.
Yeah, the image with I love the image with like grabbing the world, but I don't know if what you were saying and what the image was, I was disconnected with that as well. Because it felt to me like that was a real struggle as opposed to something positive.
Okay, cool.
The other thing, I mean, that was weird, and you couldn't see this, but the way the lighting thing was on your face, the letters on your face, that was driving me crazy. In fact, at one point it was on your teeth. I'm like, okay, this isn't great.
Okay, great.
So I don't know what to,
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably can make the projection smaller and just move it over to one
Yeah.
side. Probably
Okay.
not
Yeah.
Right. Yes, and that's something that could have been more aware of, too, but I didn't see
yeah.
that. Great,
And
thank you.
another thing, I love your gestures, but there's something that you're doing that feels not as natural. And so I feel like there's something to kind of open it up or loosen it up, where you're doing something with your finger like this. And I feel like it needs to be more inviting as opposed to, because it almost is, well, I don't know, does anybody have anything to add to that? I feel like a performer could give you just a slight different.
I think what it is like, to me, it appears like you're still in your head with the content a little bit.
Yeah.
And so when you're in your head with the content, which we all are in the development stage, and when it's not really coming from your heart, then it inhibits your gestures a little bit. So it's natural, if I can say this, for you to be a little or appear inauthentic right now because you're still in the creation phase. But once you internalize the speech and you own it, then your natural gestures will just flow. But if you're thinking about what am I going to say next, which we all do, then it's natural for your gestures. You know, you'll start a natural gesture, then maybe cut it off. And so we pick up on that on a subconscious level. But I think you did an excellent job. The one thing that I would add after hearing everyone else's feedback, just think of yourself as a tour guide when you take us into the chamber. So if you were a tour guide and we were all standing behind you and you were about to walk us through this chamber, like how would you talk to us as an audience that way? And when you do that, then that's when we really feel the experience. So as you go back to that content and to develop the chamber, just think about yourself and actually write it from that perspective, as if you have a group behind you that you're taking through what this experience is like.
So that brings, can I just ask two things?
You've got a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Great. So that brings up a really great point, because I'm a bullshit person. Like there's no way that I would ever say that's a bunch of BS. I would always say that's a bunch of bullshit, because there's that like it makes that program in your brain go, did she just say bullshit in this public forum, right?
Right.
So I weigh that again. I mean, I totally get what you're saying, and I've pulled back a lot. And when I stay authentic, when I get that point, there's a lot of stuff that when you go in the chambers that happens that doesn't happen here.
Right.
Then on the flip side of that is that maybe it's because it's the development, but
Right.
I still feel disconnected from the content. And then that's what I'm wondering, is it that it's because I'm still thinking in my head, what the hell are people thinking? rather than,
Sandy, let me ask you this.
Great,
What do
thank you.
What do you want people to do as a result of hearing this?
I want them to get, I'm gonna just be really bold. I
can
want
see
them
that
to
happening.
fucking wake up and realize that the things that they're doing in their life, like have the courage to look at themselves instead of looking out there for what the hell is going on in life, so that they make a personal commitment and they make a personal choice as to how to have an empowered life. That's what I want them to do with this whole thing.
Okay.
I
So
want them to get out of, it's all out there, to what the fuck am I gonna do about
have
it?
you ever written that down before, the way you just expressed it?
Yes, but I've never delivered it in that content. Because
Okay.
out of that has come this, in a way that how can people hear that? How can people relate to that? I mean, I got raw leadership out of that.
Right.
But raw leadership, I had to figure out how I got successful teams,
Mm-hmm.
like how to talk about that, because that's just what I do. So
Okay.
this is a process of taking what I do and putting it into words.
Yeah, and that's hard
So-
for all of us to do. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
the
that's what I'm working on, is how to say it in a way that people can hear it, because I hear all the time, you gotta meet people where they are, right? So I'm trying to decipher this, right? So that's where this is coming from, and that's where I feel like I'm disconnected.
Okay, so couple quick things, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. I don't want to monopolize the time at all. So as far as Kevin's point, I think that's well taken in terms of cursing in front of an audience. So I always say to my clients, if it works, right? So I mean, if you're in front of an audience and they're an edgy audience or something like that, or you have some background and you know it'll work, then it works. But if it doesn't work, then it really doesn't work. So you have to be careful with that. So one of the ways that you can frame that up, if you feel like you need to be in that place to be authentic, is, and I've done this in a presentation before, is put a warning in the beginning, you know, like this presentation is rated R at some point, and you may see, and in my presentation I said, you're gonna hear some explicit language, there's gonna be nudity and things like that, and I just make a joke and I have like a baby with no shirt on for the nudity, but a few times during the presentation I do curse for impact. And so I want to give them that warning up front, and it's worked for me. So maybe something like that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so maybe something like that will work for you.
I have to say something else, sorry. What you said when you talked about it just now,
Right.
I got chills.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the Sandy I know,
Right.
and what you delivered is too watered down.
Yeah,
So here's the thing,
Okay.
take a note from US Today, or whatever the hell that TV show is, right? I watch Suits, which is not as good as it used to be, but that's beside the point.
Great.
But they were the first ones I ever heard say shit on TV, and
Right.
now they're saying, and you know they're saying fuck, but they bleep it out. That's their little clever thing. So maybe you do that. But you had so much power and energy when you said, I'm like, oh, now that message I'm gonna listen to. But you gotta get, I know it's not an easy thing, but you gotta take that, because that's the full-on Sandy
Yeah,
in your message.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay, and that is our time.
Okay, great.
All right.
I'll connect up with you later, thank you.
All right,
Thank you
Sandy,
guys, thank you.
Sandy, let me ask you, are you connected to the Wi-Fi right now?
No, I don't think so.
Do we have Wi-Fi here? And the reason why I'm asking is,
Yeah.
since we were down one speaker, I have a 2-minute video that I just did that I wouldn't mind showing, and I
I
can send you the YouTube link.
Yeah, no problem, because I have my hotspot. If I don't,
Okay.
I can get it on there. Yes, absolutely.
So
Happy
there
to.
is there's a guy, he's a sales coach and speaker. His name is Keenan, and he uses the F word a lot. And I had a very interesting conversation with him about the use of cuss words in a professional setting, because companies like IBM and others that probably would not want that, I actually do hire him, and so just look him up. He's just a very
Okay.
interesting guy, and could give you some perspectives on still being authentic, but maybe toning down the language a little
Yeah,
bit.
great, perfect,
Yeah.
thank you.
Christy, can I make one more comment for the group that I've got?
Yes.
And when you do your introduction, make sure that your introduction is not all about you. You want your introduction to solve a problem for your audience. So before you take the stage, they already say, oh man, I can't wait to listen to this guy or this woman. So it's as simple as asking, have you ever blah, blah, blah? Or have you ever felt like blah, blah, blah? Well, if so, you're gonna love today's speaker. And then Des Thornton is, blah, 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 a few things, and then here's Des. So that way, before I take the stage, I'm not telling them that I'm this, I'm that, or whatever. I'm saying, what problems do you have? And if you've ever said yes or thought about this, you're gonna be glad you're here because I'm gonna solve those things today. So it's a real, an old speaker trick, but it works really well because it makes the audience lean in and say, wow, I'm really about to, get a problem solver. Here's something good here.
All right, excellent, I love it.